and welcome to the Church of Caron. Well, I had the privilege of seeing the film Mustang, and if you haven't seen it, it's a must to see. Unfortunately, it's probably not in your theaters because it's already gone to the discount theaters where I saw it, but it is an amazing film, and I highly recommend it when it comes out on DVD, Blu-ray, to see this film. The actor Matthias Schoenaerts, I think is how he pronounces his name, from Belgium, uh, really hit it off with the director, and she actually was looking for an American to portray the part. She's French. She's Laure de Clermont-Tonnerre, and she is incredible. She's 35, young director, writer. She wrote, directed this Mustang film, and a few years back, she wrote and directed Rabbit, and I have yet to see that. It is based on the rehabilitation program of female prisoners with small animals. She, once she did that film, really was intrigued with this whole aspect of animal rehabilitation, with prisoners, and so decided to then pursue men rehabilitation with these wild Mustang horses. And it's a powerful film, riveting, evocative, provocative, and my Chinese zodiac sign is the horse, so I really identify with a horse, and I love the horses in their natural environment running free. There's nothing more beautiful and moving than a wild horse in a wild terrain, and I did not know that our government, our American government, corrals these horses with these big black helicopters that sound terrifying and look terrifying to the horses, and traumatizes them for life, actually. So that was heart-wrenching to view, as I did not know about this. And so these wild Mustangs, some of them are taken to these prisons and used to rehabilitate these male prisoners. And this particular prison in Nevada has this program. So Laura, the director, found out about this, and then she was writing this story based on that. And then she and Matthias, when they started on this project as actor, director, went and visited the Nevada Rehabilitation Center together, and also San Quentin, to interview and speak with the violent male prisoners there, to gain a greater understanding of anger and sort of the psychology behind that, and then the rehabilitation and how that goes. So one thing that we know is that our prison system sucks. It's really fucked up, and that's, humans have such an ability to, for one, screw their own lives up by terrible choices, but two, they can get more screwed up figuratively and literally in a prison, and then they've done their time, but they come out and they're ruined. Basically, they're going to go back to crime because they've been more hardened within the prison system based on how it is set up. And we have a horrible, terrible prison rehabilitation. It's just wrong. I think, if legally you've done a crime and you've done your time, then you should be able to come out and be rehabilitated, not worse for your time inside. And unfortunately, people are worse, and it's something that this film also sheds a light on. But her main focus here, Laura, is to really explore the beautiful and moving subject of rehabilitation via the animals. And so again, this film starts off with a very tragic visual of these wild horses being corralled by this very loud and scary helicopter, and then it takes us into this juxtaposition of the wild horse being corralled and trapped versus the man who has committed a crime and is also entrapped, captured within the prison system. Now you have two very different, you've got the animal versus the man. You've got the animal that was running freely, not doing any crime, versus the man who had freedom and did do a crime. And yet this crime we see in this film is in a heat, in a rage, so it wasn't premeditated. And often that happens with these crimes, is that a male is really worked up and then in seconds does something very violent that changes his life and the victim's life and all of those around that are affected by it. In this case, we learn about his wife and we learn about his daughter. So the juxtaposition of this wild horse being entrapped for the purpose of rehabilitating the prisoner is very poignant, because Matthias first encounters the wild horse because he hears this sound coming from this metal cubicle in the desert there. And it's the pounding of the hooves on the metal. You can't see through this metal, so it's a big box of metal. And the horse is throwing his body against it. It's neighing. It's the sounds are very stressful. It's the horse you see, and you don't see it, but you know that it's having a very traumatic experience. It's been out in the wild. It's running freely. And now it's trapped. It can't run. It's in an enclosed space. It's terrified. And so then we see the prisoner. And we see how prisoners, whatever their crimes are, and of course they're across the spectrum, and they can be something that someone's done just one time or repeat offenders, but they're all thrown into the system together. And so you have to become, if you're terrified going into prison, you have to become a terrifying person almost to survive if you're not. And so you're tapping into more anger in prison in order to survive it. So this whole dynamic of the encaged wild animal versus the encaged human who's lost their freedom, and then this symbiotic relationship that occurs between the two as they come together. And for these criminals, they take a horse and they are told to rehabilitate this. Well, they aren't told to rehabilitate, they're told to train the horse. And in that training to ride it, they are rehabilitated in this process. And it is a phenomenal movie to watch how this relationship is between the horse and the human, and the connection they both have because they both essentially have been entrapped. The strength of the horse versus the strength of the man. The strength that caused the man to do something violent to his wife versus the strength of self-control that he then has to tap into in order to complete this program of rehabilitation with the wild horse. Strength is such a compelling concept that I had in this movie that I haven't really heard talked about when I hear this movie being reviewed, or even the actor and the director talking about. But to me, it came through clearly. Strength, the negativity of strength and the positivity of strength. The negativity of strength was his act of rage that created a crime against his wife, and then he was imprisoned for this. That negative strength then had this reverberation that went out to his child, and his daughter is in the film. She visits him, and her strength. So she has a different kind of strength that is being presented in this film. Her strength of survival in the midst of this tragedy and this crime. What burdens she, as a young girl, had to carry as a result of her father committing this crime against her mother and then being incarcerated as a result. Powerful, powerful to see her strength versus his strength. Then that negative strength being taken, and we see his transformation into positive strength. The strength of the animal, and how sad it is to see that strength of that animal being taken, but then how it's being used into a positive for the human. So there's a lot of layers to this film on just the topic of strength and how we see it in the criminal, Matthias, how we see it in the horse, and how we see it in his daughter and her phenomenal strength that she has had to bear all these years. So this film not only deals with strength, but also with redemption. And so for me, I find it really compelling, because here we see somebody who, in a snap, did something violent, and his whole life was changed as a result. He comes into a system, and because we don't have a prison system for rehabilitation, we really don't. This is a unique system in Nevada, but it's not for all the men there. You have to actually go through some hoops to even be able to become a part of the horse rehabilitation program in Nevada, in the prison there. So unfortunately, we really haven't created prison systems where someone does a crime and they get in and they truly get rehabilitated, so that after they've done their time for their crime, they can go out and they can make the world better. That's really what we want to do as humans. What we're here on earth to do is make the world better. But often, because you go in and you've done a crime, you become a repeat offender often, because when you go into these prison systems, as we all know, you get more hardened. You live with more fear. You have to become more of a tyrant. If you weren't already, you really have to become one to survive. So it's really heartbreaking, the prison system. It's really something that we need to address, but it's low, of course, on the level of, you don't even hear politicians talking about this, but it should be. So this movie is so moving on multiple layers, and again, I highly recommend it. Great acting, great directing, and it also, again, just shows the beauty of the human with the animal. And, for me, watching the beauty of the horse, because I believe in God, I see the horse as the creation of the magnus opus creator, and the beauty and the strength and just this spiritual element that is there within the horse that enables this person to connect with, that enables him to have a more spiritual outlook on life that he didn't before when he was dealing with humans. And this to me is comedy. Now, the director, she said originally she thought that these would be comedic, these concepts, and then it actually turned into being more of a powerful, dramatic film. Not only this one, but her previous one, Rabbit. But where they were filming this in Nevada, there was one aspect there where the Misfits actually had been filmed, and that was great irony to her. But, God loves the animals, as Bob Dylan sings. And it's true, because if we think about it, the animals were created first. And many days were spent on the animals. And then who was saved the most on Noah's Ark? The animals. And then where is Jesus Yeshua born? In a barn with animals.